We are back on MorningLine. Our guest with us this morning is Clint Kelly. He's a malpractice attorney and a regular guest on this show, and we can take calls as we talk about malpractice and what it is. There was no doubt at all that this RaDonda Vaught case was a malpractice case.
No question.
That's civil. Of course, she's standing trial right now criminally on this. And yeah, the defense, I guess so, they're going to have to decide one way or the other if, I think Vandy probably, and they had to pay, in a civil case. How much fault is hers? I had heard early on when this case broke, nurses from all around the country, there was a GoFundMe that I think got up to $100,000, and there's a lot of people around the country watching. But some of the nurses that I've spoken to locally who initially said, you can't charge a nurse like this, got into the file when it finally, discovery was made available and we could see what was in there. And when some nurses I've talked to looked at that and saw all the things, they didn't attack her, but they backed off. Yeah. They said, this came to the level, I'm a nurse and I support nurses, but what was done here was so over the top, they could no longer get out front and say, well, how dare you charge a nurse criminally for a mistake when they saw how many steps. Now, that's just one example of my personal experience talking to some nurses who took the time to really look at the documents. They backed off. Can you believe that?
Yeah, of course, I understand. There is a bigger picture here, which is the concern I told you. Our nurses and doctors are going to have to be concerned about the badge whenever there's a bad outcome. And I totally understand that, and I have sympathy for that. But the question here is the conduct so bad? Is the danger and the choices that were made by Nurse Vaught so out of bounds that there needs to be punishment on top of compensation? Because, I don't know this for a fact, but I don't think Nurse Vaught's paying anything out of her pocket.
Right.
I suspect if Vanderbilt paid a settlement, it's likely their responsibility to pay. The question is, how does this nurse get punished? And I think that's what the state is trying to accomplish. They're trying to send a message here.
Yeah.
There's some health care that's so bad, so unforgivable, that there has to be punishment for it.
And you get plenty of malpractice cases, and we know those happen daily, unfortunately. But really, tell me just how rare is it in your experience to see a criminal charge in a case like this?
Oh, it's exceedingly rare.
So this is very rare. So that's why even Glenn Funk was saying this is the exception to the rule right here.
Right. I mean, do you remember the Dr. Death series, Nick? Have you heard about that? Christopher Dunch, who was the neurosurgeon in Texas.
Oh, right. Okay.
Had a whole bunch of people who either died or were paralyzed because of this guy's pathetic surgery that he was doing. And I mean, dude was, again, what I've told you is these healthcare providers who do this kind of poor work generally have a history. This is not some one-off, usually.
Do you think there may have been flags with someone in a situation like that?
That's been my experience. It's been my experience for years that these people have histories. And for whatever reason, whether it's ineptitude on the part of the administration, or perhaps the healthcare providers found a way to talk their way out of these situations, or perhaps the healthcare providers just need it. They need them so bad, they're willing to forgive certain things. I don't know that's the case with Nurse Vaught, but I know from my experience, that's usually the reason why you have really bad care provided by some healthcare providers.
Let me ask you this. I was trying to think of a comparison, and I'm wondering if you think that maybe medical professionals are cut some slack because they're professionals and they do work with people's health. But how is what Vaught did, okay, she didn't mean to kill this woman, but she was careless. She even says she was distracted and was reckless. How is that different from someone who gets behind the wheel of a car and is texting while they're driving and hits someone and kills them? That person who's texting and driving, who was distracted, didn't mean to do it, is going to be charged with a crime. And yet Vaught, everyone's like, well, I mean, how is it different?
You've made an outstanding metaphor, and that's the bottom line here, is it not?
Yeah.
It's not just in the healthcare profession, it's for anyone who makes unsafe choices. Just like what you said, you're texting, you're driving 75 in a 35-mile-an-hour zone, so you know that it's dangerous what you're doing.
Right.
But you simply override that danger by doing what you're doing. You hit somebody in the middle of the road and you kill them. All right? Now, of course, there's the civil justice system, which is the negligence part of it, where you can get compensation, the family can. But should that driver be punished criminally because the conduct is so bad? And your analysis is spot on.
Yeah.
What Nurse Vaught did from a practical standpoint isn't different from what a reckless driver does when they get behind the wheel and kill somebody.
Yep.
I mean, there is a difference. She's not being charged with murder.
No.
If she wanted to kill,
homicide.
she wanted to kill the patient, she'd be charged with murder.
And that's different. The only time we usually see criminal charges involving a doctor or a nurse is when, for some reason, they're intentionally doing something to hurt someone, and that happens on occasion.
Angel death cases. That's right. That's not what we have
cases
here.
like this, she didn't. I sit there watching her in court, and you saw that clip. I mean, I do feel sorry for her. I know she didn't mean to, and she's going to have to live with this burden the rest of her life. But at the same time, if that woman was my mother, not Vaught, but the patient, I would be furious. And I'll say this. I think Vaught's family has shown a lot of grace and class in the way they've handled this. I don't even know really how they feel about the fact that they're pursuing criminal charges against her, not that it's their choice. But they were there testifying yesterday. But I feel sorry for her. But at the same time, if that was my mom who died that way, and I got wind of, wait a second, not 1, not 2, not 3, potentially 10, I would say, come on, how is that not criminal?
Well, the question that's begged by your analysis is, does Nurse Vaught owe a debt to the family and to the state of Tennessee because of the conduct? That's what this jury's going to decide.
Do you believe, regardless of how this plays out, her career in medicine is over?
How could it not be?
Okay. See, I think it's true. We said at the end of there, if it was consecutive in all this, she could, if convicted of both charges, face 10 years.
Would you trust her to provide care for someone else? And look, and think about it. What if you're a hospital and you're hiring a nurse? You're on notice on the day you hire this nurse that there's the risk that she could act dangerously and paralyze or kill one of your patients. Are you going to take that chance?
Yeah.
If you're a family member, would you want to entrust the care of a loved one to her? Absolutely not.
No.
So how do you let her provide health care again?
It's probably
we're one-on-one with the patient.
So really, if you think about it too, the big picture here, the 10 years is an extreme. The truth is, as I've talked to some of the attorneys, if convicted, she could face potentially up to 4 years, okay, with time served. She has no priors. There's a very good chance if she's convicted here of reckless homicide, she does no time at all. She may do some, but no time at all. I don't know if she'd have any fines involved in that, but basically she'd have a felony on her record and her medical career would be over. That's what she's facing here right now. Did it surprise you that there was no plea deal?
No, not at all.
You thought for sure from day one.
Who told you 2 years ago this case was going to go to trial?
You said it was going. And what was your thinking?
There's no middle ground.
There's no middle ground.
There's no middle ground here.
Meaning there's nothing that Glenn could offer that he would be satisfied with.
I mean, she is, in her mind, I would imagine, believing I made an honest mistake. I did not intend to kill this lady, nor did I believe I was going to, so why am I pleading guilty to a crime? The state is looking at it from the standpoint, this was a horrible death. You made horrible, unsafe choices. The two are linked together. You owe us a debt in the justice world. And so between those two poles, there's no middle ground to resolve this thing.
Yeah. We'll take another break. When we come back, we may take a few phone calls, 737-7587, and this to stick around for. As you watch this, we won't get too deep into the weeds because the trial just started, but what a viewer can take away from this saying, well, how do I know that's not going to happen to my loved one? The types of things that you talk about, and you say this stuff goes on, doesn't always result in a death, but what you as a patient or a loved one of a patient can try to do to prevent this and how you do that. We'll take a break and be back with that right after this.
This is a Storm 5 weather update. For weather on the go, download the Storm Shield app.